Okay, let's get this show on the road. You are listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. Well, hello again out there. It's only been a week, and this is a supplemental show from the Midnight Skeptic. I usually do this every other week, and last week's show was broadcast on Sunday, this last Sunday. Today is Wednesday, September 1st, and this is going to be broadcast on this coming Sunday, the 5th. The 5th of September. In my notes, I couldn't do the math. I wrote down September 12th. I don't know. Anyway, this is going to be broadcast on this coming Sunday, the 5th, and Labor Day weekend and all of that business at the usual time, 9 p.m. on KPCA LP, 103.3 FM, and worldwide, www.kpca.fm. And the views of the Midnight Skeptic should be the views of PCA, that's Petaluma Community Access, and all of its television studios, and then especially KPCA LP, the relatively new radio station that they're starting up. LP stands for low power, by the way, and I'm not sure what the cutoff is for the number of watts. We don't have a very strong signal. We barely get out of the city limits of Petaluma. And I've got to reiterate one thing here. Please send all suggestions on how to make this show better, suggestions on what I should talk about or rant about, and especially send all hate mail to the Midnight Skeptic, all one word, all lowercase, at gmail.com. I'll get it, and then I'll deal with it appropriately. The reason for this supplemental show is I got some blowback on things I said on last week's show. And plus, there's been a lot of things going on that I felt I should talk about, one of which is, I think, a danger to our country. Okay, I'm going to run through shout-outs right quick, and I'm not going to take up a lot of time with this, explaining who all these people are and where they live and everything. Geraldine Goldfinger, Long Island, Dr. Dave Rubin down in Raleigh-Durham, Nelson and Alice Lydell in Florida, and Amelia Beamer in Florida, my brother Brandon down in Santan Valley, Arizona, and my niece Andrea. Please take care of yourself. She's a nurse. And Karina Hilliard down in Arizona, town of Patagonia. She's studying herpetology. Okay. Locally, Stan and Kathy Gustafson down in Pacifica, and Rich and Kathy Berger over in another brain freeze on the town. It's in Sonoma County here, rural Sonoma County here. Locally, Tom and Nancy Throw, and Tim Conrad, and up in Sacramento, Rosie and Dave Takach, and then Mickey Huff, godfather of Project Censored. Wow. And he's a history professor down at Diablo Valley College. Okay, enough with the shout-outs. A couple of new ones, newbies. Yvonne Santos, she lives in San Francisco. As a old friend of mine. And Shannon Reed, I think she lives now in Arkansas. Anyhow, those are two recent additions to the fan club of the Midnight Skeptic. Okay. More good news. MGN. I promised all my listeners that I would try to include good news to my broadcasts. Coffee, my favorite beverage. Current studies show that drinking moderate amounts of caffeinated coffee, will protect adults from type 2 diabetes, liver disease, prostate cancer, Alzheimer's, and many, many more. The medical article that I read about this was extolling the virtues of caffeine, and there's been many studies. It used to be that, by used to be, I mean a long time ago when I was a little kid, coffee was just sort of in the same category as alcohol. It was just kind of looked down upon, and it's bad for you and stunt your growth and blah, blah, blah. Those are old wives' tales. Coffee is good for you. And the coffee industry is not paying me or bribing me to say that, although I wish they would. Okay, as for heart disease, a large analysis of data from 3 major studies, one from the American Gastroenterological Association, it's a mouthful, found that drinking 1 or more cups of plain decaffeinated coffee a day was associated with a long-term reduced risk of heart failure. All right, I'm all for that. Reduced by between 5 and 12%. Okay, for each 8-ounce cup of coffee consumed daily. Now, their idea, all of these studies about coffee use the word cup. Well, that means 8 ounces. This cup that I drink out of is 16 ounces. So, and I don't drink black coffee. I will if there's nothing else in the morning, but there always is, and I make sure there always is. I put a small scoop of French vanilla ice cream and then about a shot of Irish cream. And, it's not because I start drinking when I get up. I don't. It's just that I like the taste of it. And, okay, enough said about that. I'm going to finish off the last little bit of coffee in this cup. The people on YouTube see this. You're going to have to, the radio people and the online people, you're just going to have to use your imaginations to see me finishing off the last of this coffee and out of this cup. Okay. More good news, and this is going to be a little bit of an extended good news. Gavin Grimm, his last name is spelled Grimm, and the ACLU won their legal fees fight against the Gloucester County, Virginia School Board. Good. $1.3 million in total for all the fees and an award money for Gavin Grimm. And if you don't know who he is, he's a transgender male, born female, and transitioned in how he presented himself, how he wanted to be known as at a relatively young age. And none of the articles that I read about him give the exact age that he did did transition, but it was before high school. And anyway, he was the only one in his high school that we know of that was transgender. And this lawsuit, it took 6 years to settle this, and it was the result of a discriminatory restroom policy for transgender students. Okay. And we all know who's behind this crap. Bathroom bills. It was fundamentalist evangelical Christians who are the primary base of the Republican Party. They're behind this, and a lot of other bad things that I'll be talking about later. But anyway, the ACLU came to Gavin Grimm's defense, and they won. They won the lawsuit, and let's see, what did I say? Discriminatory restroom policy for transgender students that violates Title IX and the Constitution. Now, a quick aside about Title IX. I was an assistant wrestling coach at a high school down the peninsula a ways here in California. And when Title IX in 1972 came down the pike, well, I was buddy with all the other PE coaches, and they had all their shorts tied up in a knot because of this. I didn't speak out in defense of Title IX, but what it was a directive that allowed women's sports to be equally funded as male sports. Well, their jock sentiments were assaulted, in their opinion. Well, what Title IX has accomplished, among other things, is our women's Olympic teams on all of the sports that they participate in. And one that I follow rather closely and enjoy watching are the Stanford women's basketball team. So 3 cheers for women's sports, and Title IX has been expanded since 1972 to include transgender students. Okay. This spokesperson, her name is Eden Hall. She's a spokesperson. Oh, can't read my notes again. Sorry about that. Eden Hellman of the Virginia ACLU said, quote, Gavin simply wanted the same rights, dignity, and respect as his classmates. What a concept. Christian fundamentalists treating people with dignity and respect that don't hew to their standards that God has told them to uphold. I guess all of you out there can tell that I'm rather down on fundamentalist Christians. I've spoken many times before on the fact that I think religion in general has been bad for the development of humanity and has not been a benefit at all. Okay. I always get off on these rants and get away from my notes, if I can even read my notes. Okay, Gavin simply wanted the same rights, dignity, and respect as his classmates, yet the school board fought against him every step of the way. He was required to, and they gave him this choice, which is not really a good choice, to either use the bathroom of the sex that he was assigned at birth, which would be the girls' bathroom, or a special restroom in a building that's quite a ways away from his classes, or the nurse's room. Well, doing any of those things is kind of an insult to your very being. Okay. Um, in a August 26th, 2021, I mean, this is, a couple of days ago, the Gloucester County School Board, a very terse press release, said that their insurance provider has, man, reading my notes. Their insurance provider has addressed the plaintiff's request for attorney fees and settlement money. And so the Gloucester School Board, I imagine that their insurance premiums will go up as a result of this. So being dicks costs money to fundamentalist Christians, and I'm glad for that. Maybe it'll bankrupt them. Okay. On Monday, June 28th of this year, the Supreme Court left in place a lower court decision that allowed transgender student Gavin Grimm to use the bathroom that corresponded to his gender identity. Now, right-wing creeps have used this phrase, gender identity, to raise the argument that Mike Huckabee, the fat dick from Arkansas, ex-governor of Arkansas, said on a interview show, now this goes back a couple of years, but when this bathroom bill debate, quote unquote, was going on, he said, well, what if I decide one day that I just want to identify as a girl and put on a dress and some lipstick and go into the girls' bathroom? Well, that just shows you what kind of a moron he is, and his daughter, who is running for governor of Arkansas this year. It just doesn't work that way, and sexual predators, which potentially most fundamentalist Christians are, in my opinion, they can be dealt with on an individual basis. All right. Gavin Grimm himself said, quote, "I am glad that my years-long fight to have my school see me as who I am is over. Being forced to use the nurse's room, a private bathroom, and the girls' room was humiliating for me." Okay, completely understandable. "And having to go to out-of-the-way bathrooms severely interfered with my education." Okay, he has since graduated. The suit was filed when he was a sophomore in high school. And he is now in college, going to Berkeley City College. That's just over across the bay. And he's 22 now, and he has expressed a desire to remain as a trans activist and an educator. And he said that eventually he would like to become an English teacher, and I wish him luck. He has undergone, and I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but it was, he was over 18 years old. He has undergone a reassignment surgery, which is, in my opinion, something that probably should not be done before the age of 18. I might get some blowback from that, but that's my opinion. In the New York Pride March of June 25th of 2017, Gavin Grimm and Chelsea Manning were both honored guests. There's a picture of them riding in the back of a Cadillac convertible in the parade together. And another thing that Gavin Grimm said was, quote, the school board could have just let, let's see, who said this? It wasn't him saying it. I think it was one of the ACLU people. The school board, quote unquote, could have just let Gavin use the boys' bathroom, but instead opted to fight a child in a costly legal battle that they lost. Okay, in November of 2014, Gavin Grimm, then a sophomore, stood up before the Gloucester County, Virginia, and said, quote, all I want to do is be a normal child and use the restroom in peace. I'm just a human. I'm just a boy. No student has given him trouble. No student has given me trouble. Only the adults. And that's the way it usually is. You get these Christian fundamentalist parents involved in things, and, well, needless to say, it goes downhill from there. Okay, speaking of Christian fundamentalists, the Reverend Billy Graham's granddaughter, Sissy Graham Lynch, she addressed the 2020 GOP National Convention. This is the one that reaffirmed their fealty to the orange bloat bag. She said, as part of her speech in front of the Republicans, Democrats pressured schools to allow boys to compete in girls' sports. Well, trans girls are not boys. They are girls, okay? And use girls' lockers rooms. Another Christian fundamentalist horrible fear. Okay. And Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, is her father, and he's kind of a stalwart of the GOP creeps. Okay, I didn't know whether to list this that I'm going to say right now. It's just a little blurb under good news or not. I'm just not going to call it either good or bad news. Liberty University, that fundamentalist bastion of, I don't want to call it higher education, but just Christian education. The MAGA Evangelical University in Lynchburg, Virginia, is now in total quarantine after beginning the school year with no mask or vaccination requirements or no social distancing. Well, it came back to bite them in the ass. All right? Okay. There's a new segment. I don't know how many Midnight Skeptics this is going to last, because surely I will run out of material to keep this segment going. But this segment I'm going to entitle The Idiocy of Rand Paul. Okay. Rand Paul, the fake doctor, says scientists won't study horse deworming ivermectin's use as a potential COVID cure because of their, quote-unquote, hatred of Trump. And he said this in a town hall event for roughly about 60 people at the Cold Springs City Council. Now, that's Cold Springs up in northern Kentucky, right across the river from Ohio. Okay, and that was on August 27th. That was Friday. Okay. Again, the Midnight Skeptic is up to date on these things. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about ivermectin again. The reason I got into trouble, well, not trouble, it was just I got blowback from one of the posts on my site on Facebook. I said, and I probably shouldn't have said this because it was snarky. I said, ivermectin and hydrochloroquine are a way of weeding the MAGA heads, Trumpers, out of our gene pool. And okay, before I said that, I said, I hate to sound mean, but, and then I said that. Okay, I got blowback for that. So, which prompted me to, one of the Republican friends of mine, I do have some friends and relatives that are Republicans, they said, so you're practicing medicine now by talking about ivermectin and hydrochloroquine? Okay, and I'm not practicing medicine. I am just warning my thousands and thousands of listeners out there. And I don't imagine that many of my, or any of my listeners would really try those two things because they're sensible, thinking people. That's the only people I want even listening to the Midnight Skeptic. Okay. So that's that. Okay. Scientists don't hate Trump, and they are studying all sorts of different formulations and medicines and drugs that may end up helping COVID-19. Most of them do not. Okay. The Merck statement on ivermectin use during the COVID-19 pandemic, and this came out on February 4th, 2021. Okay, Merck, M-E-R-C-K. They're the pharmaceutical company that makes this. And here's what they said. Company scientists, yes, they employ scientists, and they don't hate Trump, continue to carefully examine the findings of all available and emerging studies of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19 for evidence of efficacy and safety. It is important to note that to date, our analysis has identified, no scientific basis for a potential therapeutic effect against COVID-19 from preclinical studies. Number 2, no meaningful evidence for clinical activity or clinical efficacy in patients with COVID-19 disease, and a concerning lack of safety data in the majority of studies that have been studying this. Ivermectin is approved in the U.S. under the brand name Stromectol, Stromectol, for treatment of intestinal nematode parasite. Okay, now this is Strongyloides. I'm not going to spell that out. Stercoralis. Okay, that's the scientific name of this particular parasite that ivermectin is supposed to treat. And for the treatment of onchocerciasis. Okay, that's the name of the disease that this parasite causes that ivermectin is used to treat. That's the name of the disease, onchocerciasis. That's the name of the disease that this parasite causes. Now, so much for ivermectin. There's, I just don't understand the GOP conservative MAGA head Trumpers that are willing to take that they get from their local livestock feed store, but somehow they just don't trust the government or drug companies, pharmaceutical companies, and they don't want to listen to real scientists, and I include Rand Paul in that, not real scientists or real doctors. For some reason, They've made a demon out of Dr. Fauci. I just don't understand the amount of anger and nonsensical beliefs that these creeps have. Okay, that's an independent riff. That was not my notes. Okay. Hydroxychloroquine. Okay, I've dispatched with the ivermectin stuff. Okay, now we move on to hydrochloroquine. Sold under the brand name Plaquenil, Plaquenil, has been studied for an ability to prevent and treat COVID-19, but clinical trials found it ineffective for this purpose and has a possible risk of dangerous side effects. Okay, here's a brief history of hydrochloroquine. Okay, the A.G. Bayer Company, which is a German drug developing firm, developed chloroquine back in 1934 as a treatment for malaria. Okay, in World War II, I mean, we had a lot of jungle fighting, and especially against the Japanese down in the South Seas, and in North Africa, where the Rommel's German Corps was. Well, Bayer reformulated chloroquine because of they had some serious side effects, although it got rid of the malaria. Okay, it's a trade-off. Okay, well, they reformulated it, and now it's called hydrochloroquine and hydroxychloroquine to reduce these side effects. And they can trigger still heart arrhythmia, which often leads to a fatal heart attack. Okay, that's one of the side effects. Chloroquine and hydrochloroquine are anti-malarial medications also used against some autoimmune diseases. Chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine were early failed experimental treatment for COVID-19. Emphasis on the failed. They are not effective at preventing infection of COVID. Their use was withdrawn as a possible treatment for COVID-19 infection when it proved to have no benefit for hospitalized patients with COVID-19 in the World Health Organization clinical trials and in United Kingdom, that's Great Britain, recovery trials. That's what they call them over there. Believe me, if hydrochloroquine was effective, we would certainly say so. Nobody wants to not get rid of COVID-19. If it worked, we would be using it. Okay. There was, back in March of last year, 2020, an emergency use declaration by our CDC. Okay, once these studies from the World Health Organization and the British recovery trials started coming up with their results, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's emergency use declaration for both those things, chloroquine and hydrochloroquine, on March 28th, 2020, was revoked. And you can go on there and see this emergency use declaration that was put out by the CDC and the NIH, and it's still there. However, in written across it in big bold letters, you can still read through the letters. They didn't obliterate it, but it says revoked. And then you can scroll down and it says revoked again. And then scroll down some more. Revoked. They want to make sure that you know that. Okay. A National Institute of Health clinical trial evaluating the safety and efficacy of hydrochloroquine for the treatment of adults with COVID-19, they've already got it, disease, has formally concluded that the drug provides, quote, no clinical benefit to hospitalized patients. Okay, so if you've already got it and you go to the hospital, giving you hydrochloroquine does not help. Okay, that's what this is saying. Okay, and a separate clinical trial of non-hospitalized patients with mild COVID-19 symptoms, hydrochloroquine did not reduce the symptoms. Okay, so I hope that this clears up some things. Not many of my listeners to this show was worried about taking hydrochloroquine or not. They're just too smart for that. Okay, there's something I missed here when I was talking about ivermectin. Oh, okay. This is kind of a side note. I start writing my notes, and then there's a little bit of space left at the bottom of the page, and then I add in something. Well, I did this, and then it got lost in translation. Okay. Calls to, now this is last year, before the election, the orange bloat bag was still our president. Calls to poison control facilities nationwide first increased last year following the orange bloat bag's suggestion that disinfectants be considered a possible treatment for COVID-19. While he later claimed his comment was sarcastic, he may have said this, but it was his handlers that said he should say this. Sarcastic. Trumpers and MAGA heads and GOPers, they're just too dumb to appreciate sarcasm. So, I don't know. It wasn't before thousands of people ingested Clorox, bleach, and other harmful chemicals for cleaning. And, calls to poison control centers increased dramatically. In at least 5 states, poison centers calls within 18 hours of the orange bloat bags increased, his statements increased significantly. Okay. Where am I here? Okay. An article I ran across. Okay. And I will do a whole show, not a whole show, but at least a half a show on the harm to our nation that Fox News has foisted on our company. Anyway, here's a former Fox News executive calls the network, quote unquote, poison for America. Rupert Murdoch, quote, owes himself a better legacy than a news channel that no reasonable person would believe, unquote. And the guy's name is Preston Padden, Padden. And he wrote this in an op-ed for the Daily Beast. Padden served as president of network distribution at the Fox Broadcasting Company in the 1990s and played a role in the launch of Fox News, which was started with the goal of filling, quote, an an opening for a responsible and truthful center-right news network. Well, there's nothing wrong with the center-right news network. I mean, for heaven's sakes, MSNBC is a center-left network, I like to think. A lot of its critics say that they're radical socialists over there. Well, they aren't. They're just truthful, and they do have a somewhat left-of-center outlook on things. But I'm not against some network being identified as a center-right network. But Fox has just gone way off the orange bloat bag rails. Okay, I lost my place in my notes again. Here we go. Started with the goal of filling an opening for a responsible and truthful center-right news network. Okay, quote, in recent years, things have gone badly off the tracks at Fox News. And this is Preston Padden saying it again. Padden accused Fox, particularly its primetime opinion programming, of making a substantial and direct contribution to the COVID-19 deaths via mask and vaccine misinformation and stoking racial animus and spreading falsehoods about Black Lives Matter protests, which, despite what Republicans will say, was by and large peaceful. Okay, so orange. Okay, and spreading misinformation about the orange bloat bags, quote unquote, big lie about the 2020 election and the violent January 6th insurrection at our Capitol. And yes, it was an insurrection. They were rebels, every bit as bad as the Confederate troops. Okay, let's see. Final quote. Fox News has caused many millions of Americans, most of them Republicans, as my wife and I were for 50 years. Okay. I don't know how old he is now. He's got to be in his mid-70s maybe. But anyway, lifelong Republicans, as am I. I, after all these years, am still a Republican. When I first signed up, registered to vote, I signed up for the Republican Party because I went into the reasons for it on previous shows, but I still am a registered Republican, and just out of sheer laziness that I haven't changed. Maybe if thoughtful people could start a Democratic Socialist Party here in California, I would change my registration to that. Okay. I'm riffing again. Okay. Fox News has caused many millions of Americans, most of them Republicans, as my wife and I were for 50 years, to believe things that simply are not true. Okay. Let's see. Moving along. Okay. Troubling. Okay, I put asterisks by this to remind myself to give this emphasis. Now, in addition to all the other craziness, the GOP is becoming the party of anti-masker freedom fighters. Oh. Okay, an example of this is Caleb Wallace of Texas, of course, a staunch anti-masker, quote-unquote, freedom fighter advocating an end to COVID tyranny. How has this gotten to be this way? Anyway, he's died at the age of 30 of COVID-19. He helped organize protests called freedom rallies for people, quote-unquote, Sick of the government being in control of our lives. There are many, many ways that the government is, quote unquote, in control of our lives. Why have these stupid MAGA head conservative Republican GOPers, Trumpers, seized upon this issue to worry about government overreach? And I don't even think it's a government overreach. The government and local school boards, federal government, are just trying to get rid of this COVID pandemic. Why are they fighting this? Just wear a stupid mask. People that say they can't breathe through it are just BSing you. This one guy at the school board meeting said, my daughter, it's always the parents that do this, that are Trumpers, said, my daughter can't breathe through her mask. Well, that's BS. Okay. Getting back to Caleb Wallace again. He leaves a wife, Jessica, and 3 children. She said, quote, and this is what she said, he didn't want to see a doctor because he didn't want to be a part of the statistics with COVID tests. And he tried self-medicating with, wait for it, ivermectin. Okay, MAGA head Trump thugs are getting more violent at school district and teacher meetings and outside school entrances where the kids are coming out, and the MAGA head Trumper parents get all upset when they see kids coming out with masks, and they get all upset. Boy, do they have an anger problem. These are the same creepy insurrectionists and big lie advocates. Stop the steal, kill Nancy Pelosi, kill AOC, hang Mike Pence. This does not bode well for our country. Okay, another guy, almost creepier than any of the other right-wing nut jobs in our legislature, is Madison Cawthorn. He is openly talking about civil war if future, quote-unquote, rigged elections occur. In other words, if he and other Republicans win, it was an honest election. If Democrats win, the election was rigged. Thanks a lot, orange bloat bag sociopath, for taking our country down this path. Oh man, I am truly afraid for our country. There's a lot of things going on right now that I personally am trying to fight off being depressed about. Okay. I'm not truly depressed. I know what the requirements are for clinical depression, and I am not that. I'm just, I don't know, what's a better word to use? Saddened that our country has a long way to go to get over this past, I don't know, 6 years of our nation's history. This whole thing started back when the orange bloat bag came out as a birther and questioned the legitimacy of President Barack Obama when he was both running for president and after he won. That's what set this whole thing off. And because of all of these bills introduced into state houses in Republican-controlled states, governor and their legislatures, about voter suppression, I am going to call the Republican Party in general racists, a throwback to the Jim Crow era when the Dixiecrats were in control of things down in the southern states. Now, let me be clear about this. I do have some friends, a few relatives, and they would not be my friends, or I would disown them as relatives if I actually thought that they were racists. And they aren't. So, and you know who you are. And I'm not calling you racist. What I am calling you are people that have swallowed the Fox News Kool-Aid. And another thing is, friends of mine and my relatives that happen to be Republicans, they're all way too smart to have had this happen to them. And it upsets me. And I just can't understand the benefit that they get from being in the GOP or being of a conservative bent. I would certainly not call them MAGA heads or Trumpists, but they're not that far away from being that. And as I say, it saddens me. Okay, I'm going to, I have about 5 or 6 minutes left to go on this latest Midnight Skeptic supplemental rant. So I'm going to cut this off a little bit earlier. I still have about 5 minutes to go. You have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats. Okay, I have about 3 or 4 minutes left to go before KPCA cuts me off. For those watching on YouTube, this shirt, which is different from the shirt I was wearing on the last couple of shows, this is my official Midnight Skeptic Hawaiian shirt that my son sent me from Hawaii. I'm wearing this shirt on my picture on my Facebook thread. So this is supplemental show number 2. This is the second time I've done this. I usually do, as I've said before, the Midnight Skeptic show every other Sunday. Well, there were so many things happening, like the escape from Afghanistan, which I am totally for, by the way. We should have gotten rid of the Taliban when we first went in there in 2001. And I don't know why we stopped pursuing them during the Battle of Tora Bora. They were all escaping to the border with Pakistan. We could have bombed the crap out of them at that point and eliminated more of them. And after we did that, we should have just gotten out of there. For sure, we should have gotten out of there after we eliminated Osama bin Laden, our crack team of flying in by helicopter military assassins got him. We should have, very shortly thereafter gotten our butts out of Afghanistan. And I've talked before on previous shows that us getting out of Afghanistan is turning over 50% of the population of Afghanistan to the fundamentalist Islamic Taliban, who are going to imprison women in their homes and deny education to Afghani girls beyond the age of 8 or 9. So that, plus the COVID, plus what else is going on? Republican takeover of our state houses to gerrymander and suppress the vote of those who are not inclined to vote Republican, which means people of color, the elderly, students. I really fear for our country's future as a democratic country. And by democratic, I mean everybody gets to vote. I don't mean controlled by the Democratic Party, although as things are right now, I would certainly be in favor of that. I would like to see the complete demise of the GOP, the Republican Party, and maybe the Democratic Party split into 2 or maybe 3 factions. The Socialist Democratic wing, the Bernie Sanders and the AOC wing, and then the moderate Democrats. And I don't include Joe Manchin in that moderate. He's just an idiot. And Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. They can represent the conservative wing of the Democratic Party if they want to still be in the Democratic Party. But the Republican Party should be just wiped off the face of the earth, like I hope the Taliban will be eventually. Okay, enough ranting. Take care, everybody, and I will have another program a week from now, and we'll be on our regular schedule again. Bye-bye. Pet your cats, sip some wine, think logically, think scientifically, think rationally. Bye-bye.